Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Saturday and welcome to Friendly Differences 2.0. I am your outspoken host, Dread Empath, and with me, as always,
Solid Blue Sister.
how are you, Solid? How was your week?
My week was good, busy, but good, and pissed me off a little bit because the more I learned about Black history, about stories I didn't know.
Well, as you know, I'm doing a series every day. Every day, I am going to be posting Black people from Black history that our schools did not teach us about. But today, we're going to be talking about something that some people know and some people don't know. We are going to be talking about the Devil's Punch Bowl located in Natchez, Mississippi. What do you know about it?
Well, I learned about it from you, and since you told
Okay.
me, I was doing some research on it, and Dre, it's pathetic. It's sad. It's disturbing. It's disgusting, and it just goes to show once again how one particular group of people, as much as they
Hmm.
try to erase what they did, what their ancestors did, they are still capable of doing because they are still doing it. And the fact that whether you believe in God, whatever creator you believe in, the fact that this particular type of person was created, and I'm gonna get some backlash for saying this, but the fact that just evil, just pure evil.
All right. So for our viewers, um, the Devil's Punch Bowl is located in Natchez, Mississippi. And a little back history. In order to house the large number of formerly enslaved African Americans, the Union Army created a refugee camp for them at a location known as the Devil's Punch Bowl. Okay. Many of them died of starvation, smallpox, and other diseases. They were beaten, they were left for dead, and it is estimated that 20,000 of them lost their lives. Now, you have some historians that are still arguing about that number, namely Jim Wiggins. He says, and I quote, 20,000 estimate is baseless and inflated tenfold. And an author and activist, Sir Seshish, referred to the story as concocted Confederate propaganda aiming to cast the Union Army in a negative light. Now, here's the problem I have with that is that every time we speak about the atrocities committed against Black people in this country, either somebody wants to whitewash it or somebody wants to minimize it. Now, fun fact about the Devil's Punch Bowl, the plumpest, most ripe, beautiful peaches grow there, and no one will eat them. They won't eat them because they say that it is fertilized by the bodies of the formerly enslaved people. Now, just a little bit more history. Whenever whenever white people would overtake a town, pillage, plunder, um, just rape a land, when they would murder Black people, and see, I'm going to say murder here. I can't say it on TikTok, but I can say it here. When they murdered large groups of Black people, mass graves were not unheard of. They would throw Black people in mass graves, and that is what happened here. If you go look up the Devil's Punch Bowl, it's shaped like a bowl, and many of the enslaved there were thrown in those mass graves. And it is said that the peaches that grow there are fertilized by them. Solid?
Um, you gave a description that people are probably wondering about, so why don't we just go to the video and they can kind of see for themselves? But we do have to put a warning up here, so here's the.
Did you know that there was concentration camps in the United States? This one in particular is called the Devil's Punch Bowl. This was a concentration camp located in Natchez, Mississippi. Why was it called that? because of where it was located. It was at the bottom of a coniferous pit, walled off so that the quote-unquote contraband couldn't get out. As the slaves made their way to freedom, Natchez, Mississippi in particular, population grew in size almost overnight. In order to combat the influx of the freed slaves, a concentration camp next to the Union camp was basically built to exterminate the slaves. The Union troops, yes, the Union troops, will go on to round up the freed slaves by the thousands and force them to live in this concentration camp. The men, however, would be forced back into hard labor, worse off than it was when it was on a plantation. As starvation.
There you have it, folks.
Well, there's even more, but we gonna get to that. But you know, you look back in history, and you know, you look at everything that's going on, and people say, just forget about it, just forget about it. But you know, you're continuing to do the same thing. But I have to say, once again, just the evil, just the fact that you could think of this, it's like these people were free.
Yes.
And contraband, because that is what we were and still are to a lot of white people. We are contraband. And whether you fought for the North or fought for the South, whether you're waving that Confederate flag or you're a Yankee, whatever, the fact stands is slavery was a cash cow and benefit for both sides, for both the North and the South. And we were, from aside from cotton, tobacco, sugarcane, whatever, we were the cash crop.
And you bring up that these people were free. And, you know, if you look at damn near every state in this country has some sort of racial violence attached to not only Black people, but people of color, specifically the indigenous people. But the other town that always it makes my ears perk up is Lake Lanier. Now, we've heard about Lake Lanier in the past few years, specifically 2020. I believe about 4 people died at Lake Lanier. Just a little bit of history again for you. Hey, this Black History Month, we doing it. Lake Lanier is a popular attraction, and it has a very dark history of racial tension. Now, some historians claim that it is untrue, but it's located in Forsyth County, Georgia. Forsyth County, Georgia, where Marjorie Taylor Greene is from, and yeah, her. But basically, the town was originally called Oscarville. Now, historically, they say it was a mass exodus of the Black residents due to the racial violence pitted against them. But they flooded Oscarville. And there are stories and claims that they flooded that whole town. And there are homes, cars, even people down there. And there have been some very, very strange deaths that have occurred in Lake Lanier.
You know, but you know, you look at places like, I'm sorry, it's like I'm laughing, but I'm not laughing because it's funny. I just you know, just every decade in American history has something dark. And it's usually perpetrated by white people. I'm sorry, but it usually is. And people can say, "Oh, Sally, you know, you're being racist. You know, what about this? You know, Black people do this, and you know, Latinos do this and stuff like this." But who is the instigator? Who is the instigator of all of these things? You know, the fact that you have, again, people who were supposed to be free, but because you wanted them to work, You rounded them up and put them in a concentration camp.
Right.
You know, and when you see, when you go to Natchez now, and you see all the trees and how well they're growing and stuff like that, again, it's supposed to be because of they were fertilized by our ancestors. You know, and just the fact that you want to say that it's Mississippi. I mean, Mississippi already has a dark history when it comes to dark people. You know,
and still to this day.
Yes.
Still to this day.
Yes.
You know, it's certain. Now, me, if I swear, I want to travel. I do, but it is certain places that I just don't want to go. Such as what were we talking about? Vidor, Texas, a sundown town. Sundown towns that still exist to this day. Now, I had somebody on my TikTok say, "Oh, I have a family member that lives a town over from Vidor. It's not like that now. It's the same. It's a different way." But I just was in a live with a black woman who is born and bred in Texas, and she said, "Yeah, Vidor, we don't go there. We don't go there." She said, "I ain't never left Texas." She said, "Vidor, Beaumont, we don't go there." And I find it so funny. And this is what Ron DeSantis and the rest of the right wing gun humping Republicans want to hide from history. They make it seem like we are trying to make white children ashamed of being white. No, no. But if you're not ashamed of what your ancestors did, and if you try to delete history, history is going to repeat itself.
But you know what? But it's not just being ashamed of what your ancestors did. Are you ashamed of what you as their descendants are doing?
No, because
you know, so you know, it's like, you know, Ron DeSantis is just as bad as the great grandfathers. He's just as bad as the slave owner or the overseer. He's just as bad. You know, so it's like, are you not ashamed of what you are doing as a descendant? And they're not, because they need to keep their privilege.
Yes.
You know, privilege. And to admit that places like the Devil's Punchbowl existed is like, you know, well, if we admit it, then we make it real. You don't have to admit anything, because we know that it's real.
We know, right? We know that it's real. We know that history happened. And right. Here's the thing. Every black person in America can trace an ancestor. If we really put the work in, we can trace where our people came from and what happened to them. See, me, luckily, I'm aware of a little bit of my history. My mother and most of my family was born in Florida. So that's why I said Rosewood has a special place in my heart, because it happened in Florida. You know, I have family in Georgia right now. So I asked my aunt as a joke, I said, "Hey, when I come down, you want to visit Lake Lanier?" She said, "Hell no. No, we will not be visiting Lake Lanier." And that's the thing too. And I'm going to say this, and I don't care how much flack I get for it. We have black people who try to minimize it. I'm arguing with somebody in my comment section right now that called me a clown because I'm speaking on black history, because he's like, "I need to protect this country. You worried about this black and white thing?" Dude, do you think that uniform gets you any kind of pass? It does not. Because when you take it off, you're still a black man. And even when you have it on, if you go watch a video of a black man being pulled out of his car by a police officer, full uniform and mace, yeah, he might be a troll.
But protecting the country is also dealing with and understanding the history of the country. I mean, you can't. Anyway, let's check out another video of the Devil's Punchbowl. Once again.
As the Civil War drew to a close, thus legitimately free individuals and escapees alike were captured and held in contraband camps, so named because as commodities they were considered contraband by Union troops who had no qualms about perpetrating slavery for their own benefit. 3 such camps existed in the Devil's Punchbowl area of Natchez. A massive exodus of former slaves from southern plantations trekked northward in hopes of reaching a location of true freedom, but embittered soldiers, resentful that the people considered property were now free, had other plans. Researcher Paula Westbrook, who has extensively studied Devil's Punchbowl, noted, when the slaves were released from the plantations during the occupation, they overran Natchez, and the population went from about 10,000 to 120,000 overnight. Unable to grapple with an instant population swell, the city turned to Union troops still lingering after the war to devise a merciless, impenitent solution. So they decided to build an encampment for them at Devil's Punchbowl, which they walled off and wouldn't let them out. Former director of Natchez City Cemetery, Don Estes, explained. Devil's Punchbowl is so named for a cavernous bowl-shaped gulch walled off by treetop cliffs. It was the perfect place in the heart of nature for the army to enslave people and carry out their regime of torture. The men were forced to undergo heavy labor throughout the day while the women and children were simply locked up behind the walls. Every slave man, woman, and child was starved and kept in the worst of hygiene conditions. The slaves died of torture by starvation and exhaustion. After the slaves were dead, the soldiers kept their bodies to rot inside the camps. They never cleared or buried the bodies. Instead, they provided inmates with shovels to bury their slave brothers and sisters inside the camp. They were told to bury them where they dropped.
Wow. Solid. Thoughts?
Bury them
Where they stood.
where they dropped. I mean, I gotta go to probably gonna get in trouble for this too. I gotta talk about Jewish people for a moment, okay? So I'm going to go there. So bury them where they drop, and yes, I understand that Jewish people went through the Holocaust and concentration camps and the ovens and what have you, and 6 million people perish under the Holocaust. Shameful.
Very.
But when I listen to someone like Juliana Margulies,
Mm-hmm.
who on her when she was on the podcast, which was just totally disgusting what she said. And if you are listening to this, I hope you are. I'll even cut and edit and post it on your Facebook page or your TikTok so you can hear it, or Twitter, whatever. You don't know your history, because while Jewish people 6 million, 6 million, 6 million, let's talk about the 30, 40 million Black people that perish over a course of 400 years. The fact that, yes, when the Holocaust was over, a lot of Jewish people, their relatives were murdered and what have you. And some people did not have mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters to come back to. But when you look at places like, slavery, where brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers were sold off in front of your face, raped in front of your face, humiliated. Juliana,
Girl, fuck you. I'll say it.
I mean, seriously, because I and again, you hate to compare the two, but when people like her open up her mouth and say something like that, and through that whole podcast, all I heard was people hate Jews, people hate Jews, people hate Jews. No, people hate Black people. And then Juliana actually said, how can Black people not join with us when they are pretty much the lowest of the low? So she even admits that we're, so you have places like the Devil's Punchbowl where we're supposed to be free, but still they want to keep us in cages. They still want to wall us up and not let us out and just say, bury you where you drop.
And like you said about the 6 million Jews, I just Googled it. 2 million Africans died during the middle passage. So for every 100 slaves that made it to the New World, 40 died. So that's just 2 million that died getting over here. We're not even talking about the ones that were lynched. We're not talking about the ones who died of starvation because, plantations were not. Yeah, the big house was nice to live in, but slave quarters were deplorable, and black people did die of disease. And it's always funny to me how they say, "Oh, y'all should just let it go." See, here's the thing: after the Emancipation Proclamation, we tried to let it go, and we tried to go to hell on about our business. But every time we went somewhere away from y'all
had
came
to
to
come.
us.
Y'all came to
Y'all
us.
came to
Exactly.
us.
Y'all came to us. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you still had Union soldiers lingering in Natchez. Y'all could have went somewhere else. The United States was your oyster. You could go wherever you wanted. Okay, so the population, and you know what? Here's the thing. Had they given it time, black people would have made that place prosperous because everywhere we went, we made money. We were carpenters, not electricians, carpenters, masons, teachers, everything. Okay, so wherever we were going to go, we prospered. History showed that. But it was like, okay, now because you're going to leave us to pick our own damn cotton, we're just going to make your lives a living hell, and we're going to further kill you off. And I'm just like, I was.
But what's interesting is if slavery were still the law, they wouldn't have done that. Because even though we were considered contraband as an enslaved person, as a legally enslaved person, they wouldn't have killed us off because they would have been killing off their cash crop.
Do you know that the work that our ancestors did over a period of 400 years in 2024, our ancestors made about a $4 billion industry? No, I'm sorry. I think I saw either 4 billion or a trillion. It's up there. And I
Mhm.
remember telling someone, I said, "Do you know why they don't want to pay reparations? Cuz they can't afford it. They cannot afford it." And then they're saying, "Oh, well, we have to prove everyone here was a I'm like, "I'm black, ain't I? Like, don't do that. Don't do that." My great grandmother was a wet nurse in Florida. For those of you who don't know what a wet nurse is, it's a woman tasked with breastfeeding the children of her mistress. And my great grandmother was the wet nurse of the Lerner family in Florida. And at that time, and probably still, the Lerner family was very prominent in the state of Florida. And my great grandmother had the wet nurse for their children.
Is that
And
the
that's
same Lerner family that owns the clothing stores?
yeah. Yeah, my great grandmother was a wet nurse for them. When my mother told me that, she said, "Yes, baby." She said, "My grandmother, your great grandmother, was a wet nurse for the Lerner family." And it's just sickening how we were dirty, we were beneath them and everything, but I can breastfeed your child. And you were not allowed to breastfeed a white child from the same breast that you breastfed a black child.
Unless you wash your breast first,
Right.
because that woman would have been beaten.
Beaten. And then still had to feed that child. Think about that. A child that she nursed would grow up to be her master or her mistress And wet nursing has been since the beginning of slavery. That's why you had housemaids. See, I would rather call them housemaids than house ends because there's a difference. Because them housemaids, they wasn't as pliable as the men. See, the men, they got a little bit of power, and they thought that, okay, master is here, so he lets me eat good, he gives me food, so I'm about here. But them housemaids, they knew where they ranked in the grand scheme of things, because just like master had them, some of them houseboys had them too. See, you read well enough into history, you'll look sideways at a lot of people, at a lot of things. But Solid, would you ever want to visit Natchez? Would you ever want to visit the Devil's Punch Bowl?
I would say yes and no. And the only reason why I say that is I have been to several slave cemeteries, and it breaks my heart. It really, really does, because a lot of those slave cemeteries, um, there are some people who were buried in mass graves. And a lot of those people, they don't even have headstones, but these are our ancestors. So in terms of paying them respect and homage to them, yes, but no, just in terms of the fact that I don't want to step foot in the state of Mississippi, because
Fair enough.
Mississippi just, in terms of history and even now, is still just one of the worst.
And what do you notice? What do you notice about the towns where they did the most atrocious shit, highest crime rates? You notice that? You notice
Mm-hmm,
that the
mm-hmm,
mentality has trickled down.
mm-hmm,
For instance, you go to
mm-hmm.
Louisiana. Louisiana was rich with French and Creole culture, still is. But do you understand that certain cities in Louisiana are listed as some of the most dangerous cities in America?
Yeah, and but yet they want to say that Chicago,
Chicago.
oh my God, and coming from Chicago, I have to say it's mainly two neighborhoods out of the entire city, you know. But again, that's what the media does,
Oh, absolutely.
headed by Jewish people. But you know, I'm you know, and I'm looking at what Frankie says. Frankie says, as a white person, my race sickens me. And Frankie has been a follower of mine for about three years now. And
Hey.
Frankie has a backstory, and she is a woman. Frankie, I'm gonna tell your age, sort of, so people can see how they can get the context here. But Frankie is in her 50s, and Frankie, I'm telling your age because you came on my podcast and you said your age. So anyway, um,
That's all right,
but
Frankie. That's all right.
she she's from Alabama, and when she was 10 years old, she was sticking up for two of her black classmates, and a little white boy came over to Frankie, and because she was friends with these two black children, um, hit her so hard in her throat that Frankie lost her ability to speak.
Wow.
And it chokes me up every time I tell the story. And I've had the opportunity to talk to Frankie. We've talked a couple of times, and she's always embarrassed of how she talks, because it's garble. But her parents moved from Alabama to the Bay Area. Um, the little boy got in trouble, but not the trouble that you think that he should have gotten into, back then. And she says, growing up, her parents were never taught that. And this is someone from Alabama. So when she says, as a white person, my race sickens me, what do you think about that?
I think that I wish that there were more Frankies of the United States who were ashamed, who were sickened by what their ancestors did, because racism began with white people, and unfortunately
Mm-hmm.
it will not
Mm-hmm.
end until they end it. You see, I always say this whenever I go at it with someone on TikTok. I always say, look at Germany and what happened there with the Nazis and the Jewish people versus America and what happened with black people and indigenous people. In Germany, that flag is illegal. The Nazi flag is illegal. That gesture is illegal. It's illegal. You will face jail time for doing that. They paid for their mistakes, whether the people were living or dead. They paid them. They're still paying them. Now, we could get into the Jews are just paying themselves back, whatever. They're still getting paid. Germany is ashamed. America is not.
Why do you think that? But why do you think that is? Why do you think that the mentality of, is it the country, the way the country dealt with it, or I mean, literally, you cannot close your eyes and say this didn't happen when all around us we're seeing not only did it happen, but you're repeating it. You're repeating it every single day. It's being repeated somewhere in this country. The past is being repeated. So why do you think that America, for whatever reason, cannot? Um,
Because, and I've said this, racism has become ingrained. It's it's become okay. And you would have to listen to some of the white people on TikTok who are they're actually deconstructing from racism. They didn't realize that they were taught. For example, a white lady said that there was a talent show between her and a little black girl. She said, and this little black girl sung beautifully, and a little black girl won. But what did her parents tell her? Her parents told her they had to let the little black girl win because if you won, somebody would have screamed racism. They could not tell their daughter, sometimes people just do things better than you. They had to make so at just picture this, at 6 or 7 years old, she was taught that she was better than that black girl. Even though the black girl won, I'm still better than you. So it's being passed down from generation to generation. We have sundown towns. Yes, the government does keep black and white people fighting, but those sundown towns, the government has nothing to do with that. That
mhm,
has to do with the mentality and the mindset
right,
of the people who are there and what they have been taught. Nobody is
right.
ashamed. We had to have a whole war to get just that's wild to me that people went to war because they wanted to keep people in bondage. That's the problem. And ever since then, and look at Nikki Haley with her goofy self talking about, oh well, the Civil War was. You don't know what the Civil War was for. No, you know what it was fought for. You are ashamed to say that this is what happened. Why? See, here's the thing. They argue and they piss and moan about critical race theory instead of saying, oh, they're going to teach white kids to be ashamed of being white. Why not teach them about white abolitionists? Because there were white abolitionists. There were white people who hid slaves who ran away. There were white people who were down for the cause. But see, in order to talk about those white people, you have to come face to face with the fact that those white people who help black people, they face the same danger.
Yep. Yep.
That in the end, it had nothing to do with race, but had everything to do with hate and the continuation of hate.
Yeah. Well, I want to get in this last video of the Devil's Punchbowl.
Let's do it.
Such conditions, along with the camp's location and climate of the region, contributed to the outbreak of several diseases that infected and killed the slaves. One of the major diseases contributing to the fatality was smallpox. Estes said of the concentration camp prisoners, they were begging to get out. Turn me loose and I'll go home back to the plantation, anywhere but there. Locals say human skeletons occasionally wash free from the location in times of heavy rains and flooding. Wild peach trees now dot the basin where human beings who believed they finally won freedom from slavery were tortured and died, and these peach trees are believed to be fertilized by their bodies. Like so much about the history of the United States, sadistic acts perpetrated by officials acting on behalf of the government have been deceitfully downplayed to lessen shame and facilitate collective memory loss. Whatever the full truth about Devil's Punchbowl, it's a veritable guarantee no history book will be honest or thorough enough to shed light on the excruciating conditions similar to Nazi concentration camps. This is the Devil's Punchbowl.
Grant?
You know, whenever I see pictures of things of yesteryear, you know what comes to mind is that nobody is smiling. Now, there's a reason for that because the teeth would overexpose the film, but nobody's even going like that, except for a few.
Wait, you're talking about white people? You're talking about black people?
Us.
Oh, okay.
And I always say, you know why we wasn't smiling back then? Because wasn't shit funny. The fact that these peaches grow, and I'm wondering, would anybody eat them? They say that nobody will eat them, black or white. Nobody will eat them. But I want to meet the person that says, I don't care. I'm going to eat a peach. I don't care what it's fertilized by. Because you know what? They were sick like that. The things that I'm telling you, you read certain books. It's been times I read certain books and I couldn't go to work that night. I work around too many white people. I can't read nothing like that and then go to work. Because all night, hey, what? Oh, wait, nah. But human beings did this to other human beings. When they were cutting those people, when they were whipping those people, when those people were crying out for salvation, redemption, kill me now, you have to be totally detached. And I always say one of the reasons they don't want equality is because they will have to give up their supremacy and their privilege. And the main reason they don't want black people to surpass them and have the power shift in our favor, they're afraid that that'll be their fate. They're afraid they're afraid of retribution.
But you know what? We've already shown it's not even. But why even look at it as a power shift? You know, like you said, we just wanted to go on our merry way, just leave us hell alone, and you know, we were segregated, we were doing well, whatever. But then we were doing better than them. See, they were looking across the tracks and saying that we were doing better than them. You know, that we weren't coming to shop in their stores. You know, we weren't coming. You know, which is actually funny because with Emmett Till, when they went into the store that he went into, 90% of their income came from black people. So after Emmett Till was murdered, because that's what he was, after Emmett Till was murdered, within a month, you know,
they lost it.
They lost it. You know, the store closed down. I mean, the family still owns the store, but the store closed and it never reopened. So it's like, why are you, you know, you talk about us, but you need us. And you mostly need us. And I've been saying this over and over. They need our money.
Money.
I mean,
we were the commodity then.
People can literally bankrupt not just this country, but bankrupt this planet.
Oh,
we have the ability to do that. But you know, and Anthony, why are they so evil? Why are they? Is that the way God intended? Like I said, whoever you believe God is or whatever, is that the way it was intended? Because I truly believe, I believe in karma. I believe what Malcolm X says, the chickens have come home to roost, and things are being set up where it's going to be a lot of surprises, and you can't keep screwing people over and over and over and over again and not have to pay for it.
I always say that
how that payback's going to come, I don't know, but I just know that you can't keep screwing people over and expect no retribution.
I've always said, because if you're not Christian or whatever else, and I told someone, I said a lot of them don't believe in the Bible, because if they believed in the Bible and they believed in hell, they would be terrified because of what they did. And I'm talking about the slave owners and masters of yesteryear, because they used to sit in church. But here's the thing: they used to hang black people in the church too, in front of the church.
Yeah, they did.
The pastor used to have a Klan outfit in his car or hanging up. So they don't fear hell. They don't fear God, because if they did, they would be terrified.
But you know who they do fear and who they are terrified of? Us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
final thoughts.
But my final thoughts, I was just about to say, Black History Month, they give us 1 month, but as we have seen on TikTok and Facebook and all these other places, is more than a month. Is an everyday thing. I say to white people, stop running away from history. I'm not saying you have to embrace it, but learn it. And hopefully you understand it, because the only people who are going to stop racism in not only this country, but in this world are you. You are the ones that perpetuate it and keep it going. Now, are Black people, are we racist? No, we are bigoted towards other people. We do treat other races like, I will say we have it with the prejudice. Asians, whatever. It is a prejudice. But white people created racism, and it's something that I know people who are racist and they don't even know that they're racist. And you just shake your head and it's like, I don't know. But we got a lot more days to talk about this. We got the whole year. So
yes, we do.
So Dre, you want to take us out, or your last thoughts?
All right, I'll take this out. I want y'all to, if you can, go on Amazon, and if you haven't read it already, I want you to read They Were Her Slaves.
They were her slaves, or they were her property?
They were her property. I'm sorry, y'all. I ain't slept yet. They Were Her Property. That's the one right there. It talks about white women as slave owners in the American South. And let me tell you something. Some of them were worse than the men.
They were, not some of them. They were worse than the men.
Okay. I want y'all to embrace your history. It's our history. It's American history. It's Black history. We have nothing to be ashamed of. It's like telling a rape victim that she shouldn't have been wearing that. We have nothing to be ashamed of. And you know what? Some of them don't either.
I'm still going to want you to give the last word, but also this is another book that white people need to read.
Yes. Read it. I want everyone. This is my challenge for everyone. I hope that next week y'all are in the comments. Every day, I want you to look up a Black person from history that you have never heard of, that they didn't teach you about in school. I'm doing my series, but I want us to learn. We have a rich culture, a beautiful culture, and it should be embraced. Don't let our culture fall by the wayside. everyone else is encouraged to embrace their culture. Next month we got St. Patty's Day. Then we gonna have Cinco de Mayo. Then we gonna have Independence Day. We are the only group of people that are shamed for embracing who we are. And damn it, with what we've been through in this country, we should shout it to the mountaintops. So I want to formally wish all of you a happy Black History Month.
That's it.
That's it, y'all.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.